Hello, my name is Mary Miele. I am a tutor, a teacher, a parent, and the founder of Evolved Education Company. We are a full-service tutoring and advisement company for all of your educational solutions. On this podcast, we'll explore ideas, techniques, and resources that you can use to support your school-aged child to conquer any learning issue. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, everyone. It's Mary doing the intros this month. It is January 2023, and I am here with the Evolved Education Company School Placement Advising Team, which consists of Caitlin Hasson and Becky Reback and Randi Dumont and myself. And we thought it would be a really, really great opportunity to have a discussion about who we are as people and just what brought us to all of this good work that we do, because January is the month in which many families come to us and start to talk with us about placement. Maybe you are one of those families and you are thinking about placing your child into a nursery school in the fall of 2024, or you're going to be applying for kindergarten in the fall of 2024. And maybe you're going to be starting middle school or high school or boarding school. And so next fall, you'll be going through the process of admissions. And so just so we're clear, private school admissions happens the year before you start your schooling. So if you're going to be in kindergarten in 2024, you would go through the process in the fall of 2023. So it is typical that our families come to us and we start to engage with them in January because there are things to do in these months that help us to make sure that the process that our families take in the fall go as well as possible. And I am so excited to introduce our team to you today because when we're working with families in the process, you are working with your advisor in a very intimate way. And so you become, I guess, really tied together in the pursuit of the placement. And I know I've talked to my team about this, but right now I'm coming up on closing out the season with my set of clients this past year. And it is always a little sad to get to the February time because I've been talking with these families literally on a weekly basis almost for a year. And we've come to know each other very well. I've come to know their children very well. And it is a really just intimate relationship that we form because we're going through, I guess, what I consider to be one of the most important processes that parents will take, which is placing children in an educational setting. So it's really important that you get to know the person that you're working with. And we have an amazing team here. I've really always made it my vision to create a team of experts who not only have the expertise, but who also care enough about the growth and development of your children in a way that is just important and also service forward at all times. So we're always aiming to make sure that you're getting what you need during the process. So I'm going to start off with introducing you to each person. We're going to talk a little bit about the following questions. So I'll just give you the questions ahead of time, and then I'll ask the team members each question as we go along. But just for you who are listening, this is what you're going to get to learn. So I'm going to ask, how did they come to be working as a school placement advisor at Evolved Education? I'm going to ask, why do you love what you do? And what is a favorite lesson you have taught a client during your work? And the fourth question is, what is a great piece of advice you can share with a potential client listening to this right now? So we're going to start with our youngest group of students. And this is the age group that Caitlin Hasson and Becky Reback definitely care for. And Caitlin is going to talk a little bit about that, but she deals with nursery and kindergarten admissions, but also admissions in different areas of the tri-state area, education around New York City schools and things of this kind. So Caitlin, let's start with you. How are you today?
I'm good. How about you, Mary?
Good, thanks. All right. So let's talk first about the first question, which is, how did you come to be working as a school placement advisor at Evolved?
Sure. So my background is in teaching. So I was an educator for 10 years in independent schools in New York City. I primarily taught kindergarten, but I also taught second and third grade. And during my time at my school, I was there for 10 years. So I became very involved in many areas. But one area I really started to pursue was the admissions realm. And I started to get myself involved even while I was still a classroom teacher. I started doing the admission playgroups and observing the children who would come in. I started doing preschool visits and observing the children in their preschool settings. And with that, I was able to learn a lot more about all the different nursery programs that were feeding into our school. And I really loved helping determine students who were going to be a good fit for our specific school environment. And as I became more interested in that area of work, I decided that I was also ready to perhaps shift out of being a classroom teacher, but I still really wanted to stay within the realm of education. And so I found this opportunity and to work at Evolved. And I was really excited that I was able to still use all the skills that I had accrued as a classroom teacher, really getting to know students, getting to know families, making sure that everyone is learning well and kind of putting their best foot forward educationally, and apply all of that in this new way as I work with families who are determining their best fit schools from in nursery and kindergarten, especially, just because I know that time is children change so much and evolve so quickly that I find it really exciting. So I've loved this work so far, and I really enjoy working at Evolved in this capacity.
That's amazing. And I remember all of that. And I remember meeting you when you were teaching and also just asking you a ton of questions because I was so curious what you were learning. I remember us collaborating and then, of course, you coming on board. And it's been so much fun. And I want to know the next question, the answer to the next question, which is, what's your why? Like, why do you absolutely love what you do?
So I really love what I do. I think, to reference what I said earlier, I think it's really exciting when these children, especially in the younger ages, are going through such rapid changes and so much growth and development, and helping families determine what's going to be the best fit for them right now while they're still changing so rapidly, I think is really interesting. What they're like when I first meet families in the spring can be very different from what they're like in the fall when we're actually going through the process. So I think just consistently, working with families to understand their child and the rapid changes that go on. And also taking the parent's perspective into account, I think is also really interesting. I think as a parent myself, I think about this a lot in terms of the wish list of your dream school and how to, search for that while also finding the right fit for your child as well. So I think it's really interesting to combine all those things, taking my perspective as a teacher and as a parent and bringing all of that to the table. So I really love working with families in that way.
I know it's so true. I think it's such a special time to be working with students who are so young because who they are at this moment in time is obviously not going to be where they are in a year's time. So I'm sure you're using so many of your assessment skills and just also helping parents to connect with their wishes and desires for their children with who their child is also really, really special. I totally get that. I share a lot of that love of what you're talking about. Okay, so what is a favorite lesson that you've taught a client during your work?
Yeah, so a favorite lesson I think was really interesting. So I feel like because I work with families of very young children, I feel like parents are always looking for schools that are going to be the perfect fit and get very concerned about, understandably finding that perfect fit that may, continue to be the right fit from when we place them in kindergarten all the way potentially through 12th grade. And I feel like there's a lot of anxiety around that, understandably, because this is such a big, important decision. Parents are investing a lot of time and energy into this process. But I think it's important for parents to also understand that, we're definitely looking for the right fit for right now, but as your child grows and changes over time, it may not be the right fit in fifth grade or eighth grade or some other inflection point down the line. And I like to advise parents to sometimes take the pressure off making sure it's not going to be the perfect fit for 12th grade because we don't know what your child is going to be like necessarily in 12th grade. Of course, we want, in an ideal situation, this will be the perfect school placement from K to 12, for example, but it's okay if it's not. And that's what we're here to support you with down the line too, if you need it. So I think sometimes it's helpful for parents to hear that and just know, like, let's make the right choice for right now and plan for the future, but know that it's okay that things change down the line.
I think that's so ideal because it's it's true that, there's so much growth and change over time. And I know that even with my own children being the ages they are, we've changed schools along the way. And it's definitely been something I've had to do because of various experiences and growth and development they've had. And so I think it's just helpful to block out sometimes that noise of we have to find the school, the community forever. And also understand that that may be the case and that may be the ideal, but you can also look at this as just, getting your child settled in where they will learn well right now. That's a great lesson. So let's end with a great piece of advice that you can share with a potential client listening to this right now.
Yeah, I think my best piece of advice is start early and do as much as you can ahead of time. And I think everyone here would probably have the same piece of advice. So I apologize if I stole your idea, but I feel like the fall gets so intense and so busy. And I think sometimes parents don't fully grasp how much work this is until they're in it. So I feel like the more that you can, engage with us early so we can support you with all the tasks that you can do ahead of time in terms of drafting essays and doing school visits in the spring, the better off you will be, especially for parents who are working parents. It just becomes a lot. You're working, you have children, perhaps multiple children, and having this extra job on top of it can be quite overwhelming. So I think many parents find that the more they can do ahead of time, the happier they are in the fall.
Yep, totally share that advice. It's such a good advice. And I love it because that's why we're doing this talk in January. And listen, if you happen to be picking this up and you're listening and it's October and now you're thinking, gosh, I wish I would have, don't worry. We'll jumpstart it for you. We'll help you get through what you need to get through. But it's really special to be able to work with families starting in January because we have plenty of time to assess the student, to really understand what the different school visits might look like and to work through whatever we can to make the fall easier. Thank you so much, Caitlin. That was amazing. All right. So let's go on to now introduce you to Becky Reback, who is also head of our tutoring services. And Becky works with families here on placement, especially for nursery and kindergarten, but also middle school and high school. And she also does special education placements and relocation placements. So I'm going to, Becky, ask you some of the similar questions. So first, we will talk about how did you come to be working as a school placement advisor at Evolved?
Yes. Thank you for having me. Even though I'm usually here every week, it's nice to be on the other side of the coin, being asked the questions. So my background, as Mary mentioned, is in special education. I taught students with language-based learning disabilities and attention deficits for 10 years in schools, everything from K through 8th grade. And I even was a school administrator. And I had my own child and decided I wanted just a little bit more flexibility in my day-to-day. And I knew Mary because I taught one of her kids. And I called her and was like, hey, can I work for you? Basically is how it went. And Mary's the best and was like, sure, what do you want to do? So it's great because I've kind of done many different things that Evolved. And as Mary mentioned, I'm the head of tutor services. So I support all the clients and the tutors and place tutors and clients, but I've also gotten amazing experience in the school placement realm, which I really love to do. I love working with clients. I love helping them find their just right fit. So it's a really exciting, piece that I've learned. And similar to Caitlin, in my many years in the school, I also supported the admissions department. So I understood the school side of it, and learning, the other side of it, the family side, the consultant side, has been just a great learning opportunity for me. And it's something I really enjoy doing.
So I know you kind of touched upon this, but let's get a little bit more specific. So why do you love this particular part of your work so very much?
Yeah. So, I am a teacher by nature, so I love working with families. I love working with kids, and I really love being able to teach families about their children. One thing I also do, in addition to supporting families through the entire school placement process, is do a lot of assessments for anybody who's going through the placement process, whether they're my client or not. So if they're Caitlin or Randy or Mary's client, I can jump in and do an assessment on the child from kindergarten all the way up through college. We're now branching out into college placement, and I can do, assessments that can get you ready for your college list as well. And I love being able to get in there, learn about the child, learn how their brain works, and then be able to teach the parents about that. That's one of the most exciting parts for me. I think being a special educator and understanding that the brain, every single brain is different, and then still being able to use that skill and get to know kids and their learning strengths and challenges, and then be able to, teach the parents about that so they can understand their child better is something that I love to do.
Yes, I would agree. You're so good at the assessing part. I just feel I always get so much insight after you spend time with students and go in and just, inventory them in a very holistic but thorough way. So I totally love that. Okay, so let's go into the next question. So what is a favorite lesson that you have taught a client during your school placement advisement work?
Sure. I mean, it's actually along the same theme. Through the assessments, I get to work with families, and I think it's not one particular parent that I've taught, but just generally as I get on the phone or on Zoom with parents or in person and teach them about their child and how they perform in different areas of the assessment and where their strengths are and where their challenges are. And then helping the parent to create a plan for how they can support their child moving forward is definitely my favorite lesson. I think, when you can teach a parent about their child and they have that aha moment, like, yes, that is why they've been doing XYZ, or wow, now I can go back to the teacher and talk to them how to support them in school when they're having an issue, with behavior in a certain subject because it's a really hard subject for them or something along those lines. I think, teaching the family about their child and, even when you get into middle school and high school, of course, having the child join that conversation and them learn about themselves as learners so they can advocate for themselves and just know who they are as a learner is definitely one of my favorite parts of the school placement process.
Oh, it's such a beautiful thing. It's so wonderful. What a gift we have to come to work every day and be able to help parents understand their children. And what a gift for those children to have parents who invest in that kind of process because they are now understood learners. And that's such beautiful work. So what's a really great piece of advice that you can share with a potential client listening to this right now?
Well, I'm going to echo Caitlin and say start early if possible. And for anyone who's starting at any point, whether it's early or late or somewhere in between, stay organized. Something we do for our clients is create a spreadsheet. I mean, it's like our Bible. We write everything down on the spreadsheet. And so I think staying organized is really key. It helps make sure you don't miss deadlines, you don't forget to submit something or whatever it might be. So start early, stay organized. And I would say, and I'm Randy, I'm going to apologize because I'm guessing this is something you're going to say too, but don't be afraid to dive into the process and be open to learning about your child and be okay if the schools that you thought were going to be the best fit aren't necessarily the best fit, and just, focus on learning about who your child is and how they learn best and moving forward, supporting them. I think, people that are open to learning definitely have the most success.
It's such good advice. I just did my Monday writing that I'm doing in 2023, and today's topic was on transformational learning, which was very interesting because it's this idea that in order to actually transform your learning, you need to challenge the beliefs and the understanding, the values, the core of your understanding of a particular topic. And so sometimes when we're going through this process with families, oftentimes when we're going through this process with families, there is a transformational learning that's happening with parents because they are now believing and understanding and maybe valuing things a little bit differently because of what we bring up in the process about their children and about schools. And that is really fun stuff. So I think, that advice is really helpful. Okay, Randi Dumont, same
Hello.
Series of questions. Hi. All right. So how did you come to be working as a school placement advisor at Evolved?
So I'm gonna go way back, I think, to start my response to this question. I was thinking about it, and I thought to myself, I vividly remember taking my first intro to psych course as a senior in high school, and I remember I had to do this personal narrative paper. And I thought, like, what the heck's a personal narrative paper? What am I supposed to do with that? And I remember once I got into it, I realized like I was reaching into the depths of my childhood and all of these really interesting things that I'd never explored about myself. It ended up being the longest paper I'd ever written. I was so proud of myself. And I just remember that being, looking back on it now, like it was clearly a pivotal moment in my education. And, so from there, I immediately declared psychology undergrad in college. I went up, my education was a big part of, opening doors for me in my life. From a family that private school it's not a known entity. And I was one of the only people in my family to go to a private or independent school and boarding school. And it was transformational for me. So my education was a big part of, sort of who I am today. And so I sort of combined this, like, wanting to give back to the field of education and this love I have for, learning about who you are and helping kids in that process. And went to graduate school with a focus in special ed, but I got a degree in secondary education. And then I went on to work at a boarding school for almost a decade. So I came to this work coming out of boarding school life where, I don't know if, any of you are familiar with boarding school life as an adult. You're basically raising other people's children 24/7. So I had no personal life of my own. It was lovely, and looking back on it, it was amazing, but I needed to be untethered, I think, from a school schedule, and similar to Becky wanting a little bit more flexibility. And, Mary, I think you and I connected at a time where I was really in need of something meaningful. And I was really wanting to make sure that I was grounding myself in work that felt meaningful and necessary to me. And I mean, you just spoke to me immediately. So yeah, that's sort of the 20-year answer to how I got here, but it's awesome.
Amazing. I remember that conversation. I actually remember it vividly because I was talking with a friend of mine about it first. And I said, do you think I can just call her and say, is there a world in which we live in which you would work here?
Totally.
And you were like, actually, thank you for asking. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was, you were always so generous with your advice. I remember on our initial calls together, you were just such a wealth of information. And I was learning every time I get in a room with you. I actually feel that I learned so much, but during those initial calls, it was a lot about that. And then you said yes to coming on board, and I'm just thrilled to have you here. So why do you love to do what you do?
I mean, I think that, the obvious piece of it, which Caitlin and Becky have touched on, is the relational aspect for me. I do feel like this is very, very human work, both, with one-to-one adult work and with the mentorship piece for the students. And, just to remind everybody, I work with older kids typically, so kids entering middle and high school. So we do a lot more of the deeper diving, with the older kids. They just have more access to that and more language around it. But I think that I also love this work because of how dynamic it is. I think about, even though I was leaving boarding school, I wanted to bring a lot of what I loved about boarding school with me, just not the schedule. And that was that, you're wearing so many different hats at different moments in a day or, a cycle. And I feel like it evolves. It's sort of similar. I'm sort of exercising a variety of skill sets on a regular basis here. And, it's just, I just feel like it helps me both connect to my work, but also it helps push me too, because I'm not only doing things that I feel like are very natural in my skill set that I've built up over time, but I'm also challenging myself in a lot of ways because, again, similar to boarding school, there are some days where I don't know what's going to be involved in my day in terms of the kinds of conversations I'm going to have. I mean, we do a lot of, planning and thought around our sessions, but you don't know what somebody else is coming to a session with. So I love sort of how dynamic this work is as a whole.
Me too. Me too. I love it as well. I think it's always fun to connect with people, just, evolving them into what's possible, especially with our mission being as rich and complex and far-reaching as it is to ensure everyone learns well is a big mission. And it's really, I think, drives me at least to keep thinking about how we can continue to improve this process. And it's really fun that you're engaging in that learning and pushing as well. And just the innovation as well, just in terms of, like, I remember last year you were working with students and came into a session with me saying, listen, I think we need to work on the introspection and on students being able to learn about themselves ahead of writing these personal narratives. And that was really a great idea and something that we've executed and will be executing even more pointedly as we go forward. So I guess, I don't know if that's your favorite lesson that you've taught. This is the next question, but maybe I've segued it in, or maybe you can touch upon it as well as something else. But what's a favorite lesson you've taught a client during your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that each week there's a different answer to this. Like, I came away from a session the other day just completely jacked up, so much so that my wife was like, "Well, you just calm down. Like, it's okay. It's relaxed." I was like, I so easily get excited about some of the work that we're doing with people. But to be specific, I would say, my example is attached to the pre-application skill building that I do think is very important for middle and especially high school entering students. So I take this example this exercise from an amazing resource called Ripple Journals. It's a series of reflective exercises for kids. It's appropriate for middle school age kids and high school age kids. And it comes from our good friends at One Trusted Adult who have created these pieces, and they're incredibly innovative and forward thinking. And I just love these tools. But the exercise is called the Critter Quiz. And it's essentially sort of the first step that I take into A, rapport building with a student, and B, exploring, their personality and identity. And those things are scary to kids who, aren't actively spending time in reflection, which, let's be honest, most of them aren't, right? They have so many other things that they could be engaging in, especially in today's generation. So, I like to take this work very slowly with kids. And this exercise basically asks them to draw either a rabbit, a rooster, or a rat. And when I introduce this exercise to kids, they're like, "What? You want me to draw? I'm not good at drawing." It gives me a sense to sort of like, or an opportunity to validate them, so it gives a lot of different opportunities to do different things here. But I basically have them draw an animal. And then this is very non-scientific, by the way. And basically I say, okay, if you drew a rat, then this means you are kind, creative, and thoughtful, right? And again, this is non-scientific, but then it gives them an opportunity to react to it. So maybe they'd say like, yeah, I'm definitely kind, I'm definitely thoughtful, but I'm not creative. And so it gives you sort of a launching pad to talk about or dialogue with them about, the qualities or characteristics they disagree with or agree with, or ones that they just feel confused about, or they need further, they need to pull apart the definition a little bit more, right? So you can really get into real life examples of like, okay, you think you're kind. Tell me about what that looks like when you are kind, because you and I are different people. And this is what it looks like when I'm kind, right? But it may be different for you. So give me an example of what that looks like in your life, right? So already we're starting to A, build rapport. B, I'm starting to understand the child a little bit better. And C, we're really sort of digging into the early stages of accessing what students think and feel about themselves, right? So there's accessing, and then there's the articulation piece, which is also part of this exercise as well. So it gives me some insight into how well are they accessing some of this, and also how well they're articulating it, right? So this is just a sort of an introductory exercise that I do on the pre-application skill building.
That's amazing. I mean, what a gift also for our, teenage students to be able to have that space to think about themselves and to develop themselves. They're also in a stage of their development in which that's what's happening. They're really forming and creating their identity. They're understanding themselves as part of a larger context of the world. And I think school placement for high school is really special. I've always been driven toward it because I really love the progress that I can influence as we're asked questions by schools in this process. So if a school asks, what's your favorite subject and why? Wow, what a great question that a high school student gets to explore. Or tell me about a challenge and how you've maneuvered it, or tell me what your extracurricular life means to you. All of these questions really require students to, like you said, really access and then communicate. And often I find, that students are used to just communicating. It's just like, let's go. Let's just get this essay done. Let's get these, interview questions written out, whatever. But we're really taking the time to ask questions that will develop that introspection. And sometimes it takes more time for some students and less time for others, depending on really where they are. Yeah.
And I would add to you, Mary, that like a critical aspect of our role in this sort of work is that we are a third party, non-judgmental piece, a person, to connect with in this process, right? So if they feel self-conscious about talking about a challenge they've overcome, or maybe they think to themselves, like, I don't know how to answer this, right? It's so important for them to work through that in a non-judgmental space before they get to the essays, before they get to the school visits, the interviews, right? These kids already feel so judged in this process that it's so important for us to be people that they can come to work through some of this dialogue, right? And where we can give them feedback and they don't have to feel like, oh gosh, like that's a mark against me. I guess I just have to keep going.
Right.
Like these poor kids are put through so much in this process in general, just around, the competitiveness of it and what people think about it and what you should or shouldn't be doing. It's hard, I think, for them to feel like they can just be authentically themselves in this process. So, this is an important piece of the work that we do.
Yeah. And listen, when kids can be authentically themselves, I just feel like the process works because schools can understand them as they are. Plus, they get into a school that actually becomes their learning home. And that is ideally what we want. So share with me a piece of advice that you would give to families who are listening, who are prospective families about to go through the process.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Becky and Caitlin, you got to start early. You just have to. But, to zoom out just a little bit more, I would say, and this is something my college coach used to tell us all the time, was control the controllables, right? Focus on what is within your realm of control, not all of the other stuff, right? So I'm talking about, yes, starting the process early, engaging with your child, attending events, starting to better, understand what you're looking for in a school, introspecting on or reflecting on what's working right now in our environment, right? And what are we looking for in the future? Control what you are able to control in this process. Do not worry about the rest. I find so many parents, especially, and kids, honestly, especially around this time for kids, they get so caught up in the chatter of things, right? So, for example, I've just learned so-and-so, at my school, their first choice is also dolphin. What am I going to do about that? Nothing. You can't do anything about that, right? Like, spend your energy, put your energy into things that are actually going to be useful in moving your process along and or strengthening your candidacy, right? So that would be my first piece of advice, is control the controllables. That's just like an aggregate piece of advice. But also, I would say, to parents specifically, let your child be the leader of this process. And I'm speaking, directly to those older groups of kids, middle school applying kids, high school applying kids, college applying kids. You really want in this process for them to feel a sense of onus, a sense of agency. You want them to feel self-efficacy in this process. So in other words, like, I can do this for myself, right? I see a lot of parents stepping in front of their children on school visits, talking to, faculty at other school, asking questions during a webinar, child is struggling with an essay. Let me just do it for you. Really try to walk alongside your child in this process at the very least. I would say ideally, you let them lead you. So that would be sort of my second piece of advice, specifically catering toward the older students and the later entry points.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful advice. I share your advice in that as a parent who will be going through this process yet again this coming year, I'm going to take that advice to heart and really remember to put my child first in the process, and also to really be the guide. But I think there also is, if you don't allow that space to be there, you run the danger really of consuming the process for your child. And then, of course, they're the ones that have to go to the school that you get at the end of that. So it could really not be the best. So, okay, well, and I'm going to now flip the mic over to Becky, and she's going to go ahead and interview me, as I'm a part of this team as well.
A very integral part of this team, I would argue. So obviously I'm always excited to talk to Mary and hear from her. So we're just going to ask Mary the same questions. The first one, I think we all know how you came to be the leader of Evolved and the founder of Evolved, but how specifically did you get into school placement? Because you started this really as a tutoring and then it evolved, no pun intended, over time. And so how did you get into the school placement?
Sure. Well, my mission has always been the same: to ensure students learn well. I want all of the students in the whole world to have an experience where they can access the learning that's happening for them, and where they can contribute and just feel great about themselves while gaining all kinds of skills that will up-level our world ultimately. So I did start as a tutor, and I went into homes and I was working with students to support them within various schools, both public and private schools here in New York City, for many, many years. And what I found ultimately was that some students needed to switch schools in order to learn well. They needed to be in a different placement. And I became extremely curious about that process and what I could do to really support that process. And as I worked through the process, I initially did it with consultants who were already doing the work, and I thank them for guiding me through those initial cases. And then very quickly, though, decided that I had my own unique way of doing this work. So I felt it was really important to invite families into working with our group, because what we offer is only here. It's only found at Evolved, because we are who we are and we're a unique group of people too. And what we're providing is not only access to getting into your best fit school, but also a place to understand your child and grow their skills as well as your skills as a parent. And so what drives me every single time to this process, every single year, is this anticipation that as soon as I get a family in those initial calls, guess what? At a year from now, they're going to be in a really different position as a parent and as a student, if they're old enough to participate in that way. So that's a really thrilling piece of work. And, I've always just said yes to everything. So people are often a little bit surprised that at Evolved, we literally can do everything. So we can support you with nursery school placement, middle school placement, boarding school placement, assessment, test prep, tutoring, everything. And that's because everything may be needed in order to ensure your child does well. We don't shy away from creating that kind of support. So that's kind of how I became involved. And of course, I also understand that I am only one human, and that to benefit our community, we need to have a group of experts, because when you have a group of experts, you get to learn from them. So I'm learning from each member of this team. Each member of this team is learning from each other and me, and we're supporting each other. And also the way that I assess and think about certain school placement pieces is very different than how Randi might, and very different than how Becky might, and Caitlin, and so forth. So it just has up-leveled me literally every year when we have this team together and we work on our processes. There's no way I would be doing the level of work that I am right now without the team working alongside me, because it informs and adds to any amount of success or work that I could do by myself. So that's a little bit of how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team aspect is so huge and important. We're all constantly asking each other questions and supporting each other and jumping in to help each other if someone needs to be out or whatever it might be. So I think, you've been such a great leader in that sense that you've created that atmosphere for us. And, there's, even though we're, having our own clients, it's all communal and collaborative, and everyone really shares and celebrates with each other and supports each other. So that's one thing that I think is really special and different about Evolved, is that you might have one consultant, but you have a whole team behind that consultant that's really there to support. You touched on this a little bit in your, you always say so much more than just the answer, which is what I love about you. But now maybe you can answer more specifically of why do you love doing what you do?
Because of the student. I'll keep it really simple. Like I get a little bit blushy and almost teary-eyed when I think about it, but I'm in absolute love with all of our students. And that might even be parents, because I teach plenty of parents and I adore them. I will get on the phone with them any time of the day. I just do it because I absolutely love it. Like I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me in my career, is having the opportunity to connect with the students who I learned. I mean, again, when you're a teacher, you're in the learning role always. So it's not about me bringing my idea and saying, this is the way it needs to be done, but I'll give you my advice. Like I'll tell you the real deal of what's going on, and I'll tell you the way I know it and how it may be if we try this plan or that plan. Right. But I really love learning from our students and families, and that whole process is super fun. But yeah, I love our clients. They're so fun.
Yes, we know. It's I think one thing that makes you, which is amazing. What's your favorite lesson you've ever taught a client?
This is a hard one because I have so many.
You've had so many.
I have so many. It's like, what day is today? Because I just taught one this morning. I love, what, honestly, here's my best lesson. My favorite lessons are really all about listening and, hearing from our clients, employing that active listening where I'm really making sure I'm understanding and I'm really connecting with that client, or, whether it be a parent or a student. And then I'm providing a resource, an idea, plan, something very strategic that I really know will deliver on what the family is wanting out of that time together. So those are my favorite lessons, is really like my ability to hear, listen, assess, and then deliver based on my expertise, an idea or a strategy that will ultimately help that kid to learn well through this process. So it's a lot of that, like on demand, kind of, you got to give it to them in the moment work that I love most.
I think listening is so key. I mean, we're here and we know what we're doing with school placement, but like you said, we're always learning from our clients as well. And the reason we've gotten to the point where we've gotten is because we've taken the time to listen to clients and realize what it is that they need. And that's why we've made our process so specific. So I think that's such an important thing that you touched upon. Thank you for bringing that up. My final question here would be, what would be your great piece of advice to share with a potential client about this crazy process that is private school admissions in New York City and Amazing. The surrounding areas?
Yes, private school admissions. Oh my goodness. Well, I think my biggest piece of advice is make sure you have a really strong anchor. And by that, I just mean you are the parent of a child, and it's your responsibility to make sure that your child is being educated in the way that they can learn well. And so if you're going through this process and that's your anchor, then it will help you just keep coming back to what's, I think, most important, which is your child and their learning experience. Along those same lines, I'll give you a borrowed or a taken piece of advice, let's just say, from another advisor that I worked with years ago. And he would say, block out the noise. It's another way of thinking about it, right? And I think that's always such a good piece of advice, because there's so many people that are going to tell you, well, you shouldn't look at those schools because, or I don't know, I think you should have about 8 to 10 applications. Or I heard that if you apply for, these schools and you have a whole bunch of other siblings and legacies, you're not even going to have a chance. So what's the point of that? Or I don't know if any of these schools really care about these letters, but maybe I should write them. Maybe I shouldn't. So all of these things I hear during the process of school placement, and I would say they're very noisy. Those are very noisy comments, noisy pieces of information. And I think having an anchor, and this is sometimes what we do in our sessions, it's a little bit of therapy, right? We can all agree, where we're literally saying to parents, like, wait a second, it sounds like what you're really stressing over, or what you're really paying attention to, or what you're giving energy to isn't what's really at the core of this process, which is your child and your application process into their best fit schools. So we'll just keep you grounded. Like, we can be that anchor for you, or you're just going to grab an anchor and hold it down for the entire process. And every time your friends get together and start chatting about all the things they're doing and all the different things that are working and all the things that they heard that you could do to do this, that, and the other, hopefully you'll listen to this piece of advice and just block out the noise, drop the anchor, and go forward.
That's all you got to do. Smile and nod. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing all your wisdom. And thank you so much for interviewing Caitlin, Randi, and I, and introducing our admissions team here at Evolve. We're all here to support you as the client along the journey from nursery all the way up through college. So we really have a wide breadth of skills, and everyone comes to the table with different backgrounds, which I think makes us, just that much more unique. I'll turn it back over to Mary to close us out, but thanks, Mary, for having us all on.
Yeah, pleasure. Well, it was really wonderful. I hope if you're listening that, you gained a little bit more insight into our team and just what we're all about. I just want to end by saying that we strive and aim to really meet our clients wherever they are. So if you're listening and you're thinking, is this something that I should be doing? Well, all you really need to do is to go on to our website. You can go to the apply button and book a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team who will be working with you. So that's a really nice way just to engage and perhaps to put together something that is customized to what you need. But you can also book just short periods of time with each of our consultants to strategize, to talk through something, to get pieces of advice. And that's also in the apply section of our website under book now. And that might be something that you also want to engage in and look out for. So we do have a lot of different access points to us, and we hope you take the opportunity to connect and come on in and find out if this could be helpful for your process. Thanks so much. As always, this podcast comes out every month. So this is the January edition. If you have any questions or want to know more information, the closing remarks will give you some addresses and different ways to engage with us. But have a wonderful rest of the January month. We'll see you in February. Thank you so much for listening to Evolved Education. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and write a review. You can send any school-related questions to admin@evolveded.com. That's admin@evolveded.com, and we'll be sure to address your questions in upcoming episodes. To learn more about how we can support you, go to evolvededucationcompany.com and book a complimentary 15-minute call with a member of our team. Are you a professional educator? You can join our teaching school and receive training and support. Come on by and learn more about our impressive community.